Following the dissolution of First Bank's board of directors by the Central Bank of Nigeria on the 29th April 2021, global ratings company Moody's has placed a long-term ratings and assessment on First Bank of Nigeria Limited on review for downgrade. According to the latest report by Moody's, the review will focus primarily on an assessment of evolving governance considerations at First Bank, specifically corporate governance development. The review for possible downgrade reflects the ratings agency's view that the removal of non-executive directors of the bank's board by the regulator demonstrates corporate governance shortcomings and weaknesses in board oversight, noting that the outcome of these developments are uncertain at this point, and the final and long-term governance, reputational, and financial implications for the bank was also unclear. With this latest development by Moody's, the question begging for answer is now, what will be the potential influence on investors' confidence in the bank? To provide answers to this question, and of course, many others, I have joining me via Zoom. He's an economic policy analyst and chief executive officer of the CFG Advisory, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo. Thank you very much for your time. Good afternoon, Mr. Adebajo.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Moody's reacting to this after what happened with the CBN. Moody's is saying there's going to be a review and First Bank might be downgraded. What's your overview of this reaction from an agency such as Moody's?
Well, it's normal, and I don't think it's a big deal. Given circumstances, they review, and I believe they will maintain the outlook on First Bank. It's a regulatory intervention, so that shows there's a lot of safety with that. And from the sort of actions the central bank has taken, it's more of a corrective action, so it can only add to either a stable or a positive outlook for First Bank. So it's a normal situation, and it's not a big deal, and they'll conduct their reviews.
We always believe that investors could, one way or the other, also react to all of this, considering the issues even at hand, bad loans and corporate governance issues. How do you see investors reacting also to this? First Bank being one of the oldest banks in Nigeria.
There's nothing new. Investors have seen the First Bank results. They've understood it. In case you missed it, First Bank had just paid a dividend in the middle of all this. So at the end of the day, by paying a dividend anyway, your stock price is going to adjust for paying that dividend. And so I don't really see this as any major issue. The fundamentals of the bank remain very strong, and the outlook of the bank remains also very strong. Because obviously you have the regulatory interventions which will continue to ensure that the bank is on the right track. So I think everybody's going through their normal reviews, and at the end of the day, I think it's time for us to all move on this First Bank issue because the fundamentals are there, the annual reports are there, a new governance team is in place, and they're all capable people also. So and the management has not changed. So it's more stability for the bank.
Okay, if we're not going to stay just with First Bank now, like you said, generally, what would you make of the exposure of our banks to some strategic sectors that might not be too favorable to their loans? Or how does that come to you?
Well, it's not a big deal. I think this is something that we've been managing for 20 years. Exposure to oil and gas sector. And again, central bank has done a good job in terms of managing these risks and look at the non-performing loans of the banks. I think they've come down significantly from whichever levels they've been. So the banking system in itself, I think, is very well managed, and I think very healthy. And all these issues are things that are done on a regular basis of bank examination, ensuring that you do not exceed certain portfolios or your portfolio is properly diversified. So I'm not too worried about all these issues. These were issues that have been dealt with 5-6 years ago. So what we just need to watch is more the decline in the non-performing loans, which is on course. And of course, you've been through a recession. The economy is not doing very well, and most sectors are going through various recessions. So, of course, those sectors of the economy are not going to be as productive as the others. The ICT sector, for instance, is doing very well. Others might not be as good. So these are sort of things you bear into that. The health of the economy also is reflective on the bank's loan portfolio. And the reason why you're a bank is to be able to put in the risk management systems in place to be able to mitigate a lot of all these downturns. So I think the buffers are in place, and I think the system as a whole is sound. So I don't really have too much of an issue with the banking system.
All right.
The biggest challenge Nigeria faces now is stagflation, and that is really what we need to address.
Yes, we're going there. I want to follow up with this. The health of the economy you talked about, very important. With all of the efforts now from the central bank, which we all see, and a little from the fiscal side, are they really synergizing? Are they working at par for us to be able to at least grow at the level that is projected, even if we don't overblow? But what I'm saying is, what's your assessment of what's coming from both the fiscal and the monetary side at the moment to support the economy?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that, as I've said, the biggest challenge facing Nigeria today is stagflation. We have runaway inflation at over 18%, with food inflation at over 22%. We have 50% unemployment and an economy that is only growing at 0.1%, while our economy is growing at 3.5%. Optimum growth for Nigeria is 7%. Nigeria has to grow at a minimum of 7% for everything to begin to make sense. If it's not hitting 7% growth, then we're in trouble. The country, Nigeria now, is technically insolvent, as we are spending 90% of our revenues to service debt, which is no longer sustainable. Our debt profile has hit $113 billion US. So there are many issues that we need to resolve. Monetary policy is no longer effective. There's not much the monetary policy can be done. The central bank has done all it can do, and all it needs to do now is to maintain stability and maybe go back to a single window and have a single window market-driven exchange rate mechanism. Those are the two things the central bank can do right now. The problem with the economy now has to do with structural reforms, and that is on the fiscal side, which is really where the problem is now with the government. The government needs to begin to look at how they're going to right size, because the government's expenditures can no longer sustain what's going on. You saw the problems with NNPC. NNPC made a statement last week that they can no longer fund this federation account for the next 2 or 3 months as a result of the fuel subsidies. So what that is telling you is that all the revenue projections for this year's budgets has been severely affected. So it's important that we begin to engage now in some serious structural reforms. First of all, low-hanging fruit, you need to get rid of this fuel subsidy. It's no longer sustainable. Then we need to take a look at this Oronsoye report. I think the government needs to review it, update it, and find ways to implement it. The Ministry of Finance is beginning to talk about cuts in various segments of government. That's a very welcome development, but it's important that we have a holistic approach to right-size government. Structural reforms, which is the responsibility of the government, the federal government, is really where we need to focus our efforts on now to restructure and reposition the Nigerian economy.
Very big one. There have been calls for the removal of subsidy, and I wanted to ask you next, and you already talked about that subsidy should just be eased off naturally. But some are saying some things need to give way, and that's the position of Labour, that some things need to be done to cushion the effect of what the fallout of the removal of subsidy. Some say we might buy PMS as much as 400 naira per litre. Now, if that happens, what do you see? Where do you see the masses? We're already grappling with high electricity tariff. We're already grappling with...
Please, we should leave the masses out of this discussion.
Okay.
Look, under the Jonathan government, they had a big meeting and everybody agreed to remove the subsidies. The people in this government now are the ones that are there now, and they refused to do that. They started Occupy Lagos, and the president now led a campaign about the subsidies, and you didn't do it then. Okay, now you see, the chicken has now come home to roost. You are now finding yourself in a situation whereby if you had supported that policy a while ago, then you wouldn't have this problem today. So eventually, you're going to remove this subsidy. You can't, so what are you going to do? You are going to go to the central bank and ask the central bank to start to borrow you some more money? So what is the solution? So right now, we've reached the peak. So you have to swallow the bitter pill. What if the price of fuel is 400 naira, then so be it. And the economy has to adjust accordingly. What does the masses have to do with it? They're innocent victims of bad financial and economic policies. So let's leave the masses out of it. The Labour, they better face reality. Because if they don't face reality, nobody's going to have any jobs anymore. So the earlier we swallow this bitter pill and we make the necessary adjustments, then the way it is. So is the government going to come to a standstill? You are already using 90% of your revenues to service debt because you are paying subsidy and you want to maintain it. So tell me how you're going to balance the book? The government is insolvent. The nation is insolvent. So the people that, you see, we have to take a look at national interests.
Okay.
And you need to take a look at these structural reforms. So make the decision. Why are you blaming the central bank? Why are you leaning on the central bank? This is a decision of the government. The subsidies need to go. Forget about Labour. They don't have a say in this matter. It goes beyond Labour. You know, it goes beyond the Labour issue. The government is insolvent. And because Labour is, what are they agitating for the masses? We need to it's time for us to face reality in this country now. The game is up. You know, the game is up. They should leave the central bank alone. They've done enough. So it's time to swallow that bitter pill and make those adjustments. If fuel prices go to 400, well, so be it. Then everybody will make the adjustments.
Well, I also agree with you as much as I want to do, Mr. Debajo, but I'm a journalist and will ask the questions. I just want to know, some also argue that we are not refining. Now, that's where a challenge also comes in, that it's going to be an import-dependent deregulation, so to speak. What effect do you also
that's the country we have today. So the decision to build a refinery, at a point in time, somebody privatized the refineries. Somebody said they didn't want to privatize it. This government has been there for like 6 years. They could have made a decision on the refineries to sell them, use the money to do something more reasonable. So you don't want to come and start talking today about a problem that has been there for 10, 15 years about refineries. How can you be the largest crude oil supplier in Africa, yet you don't have functional refineries for the last 25 years? Is that not a disaster? So, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. A country exporting this amount of crude oil cannot refine its crude oil. So then you look at the bigger picture and ask yourself those questions. What has happened in Nigeria in the last 15 years as to why we've not been able to get our act together and we don't have this leadership? So now this is the price we have to pay, and the day of reckoning is now. So it's not today, so we can't, that's not a new story. So we'll wait for Mr. Dangote to finish his refinery, and then that way everybody will be happy at that point. But in the interim, we'll swallow the bitter pill.
Indeed, Mr. Dibajo, let's now look at some policy documents that we've even had before now. At least yes. I was able to understand the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, and before we came up with ESP, that's the Economic Sustainability Plan now, that's after COVID-19. Beautiful documents, but how well are we implementing all of this? Many will say we don't lack policy documents. It's just the implementation that has been the challenge.
You've hit the nail on the head there, and I agree with you. As you said, the Economic Recovery Growth Plan did not meet the targets that it was set out to meet. So last year, the Economic Sustainability Plan came out. On the 24th of June this year, will be 1 year since that document came out. So let us hope there's a review of that document to see what has been accomplished, and then to be able to see what will happen. Now, another plan has come out, which I'm not sure you're aware of, which is the National Poverty Reduction Growth Plan, which came out now ago. So now, I haven't seen the details of that plan, so I'm not sure if it's a plan that supersedes the sustainability plan or it complements it. So once we have a chance to review it, then we'll find out which is which. But however, whichever way you look at it, this government has only how many more years to go? 2023. Technically, the president is a lame duck president because in 1 year's time, political party primaries is going to start. So most of the ministers you see there now are going to start to want to face their political ambitions. So really, any policy that is in place now, maybe we have only 1 year to face it. Elections are going to be in 18 to 20 months. So you know what it is like when elections start in Nigeria, everything shuts down. So technically speaking, this government has only 1 year left to be able to implement any of its meaningful policies. And this is really where the biggest challenge comes from. So all these plans, like you said, very good. But what we want to see now is that what sort of plans can we put in place to remove to be able to get the economy going. And the easiest thing that the government can do now to remove the pressure on the economy is to remove the subsidies.
Remove the subsidies. I was also reading through, and the minister said something last week about borrowing, that they have to keep borrowing to sustain the level of infrastructure development that this government is trying to achieve. Now, what impact? How is that trickling down? Are you seeing any impact? Talking about some infrastructure, we've seen some in rail and all that we see across the country.
Well, like I said, yes, but right now those are sound concepts. But you see, when there's a fire on the roof of your house, the first thing you do is that you quickly put out that fire before you start talking about other grand plans, because that is the immediate need. The house must not burn, and we cannot afford that. So I think right now, as you've said, there are some very good projects on ground. The Lagos Ibadan-Kano Rail project. It's important that this project is completed. The second Niger Bridge, they're building a road from Abuja to Kaduna all the way through to Kano. Those roads need to be completed, and all the other renovations. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway has been there. It's important that road is completed. The roads from Port Harcourt to Enugu all the way through to Abuja, and all the other road rehabilitations going on around the country. I think it's important that all these projects are completed because they're laudable projects, which will impact significantly on the development of the Nigerian economy. And I think it's important that the focus is there. And I think we should start looking at opening up. Privatizing is on power sectors. We need to do more on the privatization side. We need to maybe concession the airports to be able to bring in money. So we can no longer afford to borrow. That's what I'm trying to say. We have to find ways to generate revenue. Let me give you this information.
Okay.
The American Embassy released a travel advisory last week and told its citizens coming to Nigeria that they should prepare their kidnapping protocols, and also they should also prepare their evacuation arrangements without the assistance of American authorities. So, and that is level 3. We're close to level 4, which says don't come to Nigeria. You look across all the embassies across the world, it's all the same. So all the investors we are talking about, their governments have advised them not to come to Nigeria. That is the situation where we find ourselves. So it is important that we understand how the world now perceives Nigeria and how important it is that we need to go and address our security situation. Because if we do not address that security situation, because we didn't talk about that this afternoon, but if we do not address that security situation, we cannot talk about the economy. And to be honest with you, all we're saying here is just semantics if we do not address the security situation in Nigeria today.
It's a good way to leave it. Thank you very much, Economic Policy Analyst and Chief Executive Officer, the CFG Advisory, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo. We appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Good afternoon.